Okay, let me do a brief update. This is a beautiful spot, and you have the little waterfall over there. But I just did a little tour. I didn't go all the way to San Antonio, but I went. I'll try to be close to the phone because it's windy, and maybe you'll hear me better. I'll just give like a quick panoramic view of even the last few days and weeks of stories here in South Texas. When you come a little bit south of San Antonio, you pass an area. There's no marking. They should have a marking that says warning. Once you get this far south, expect it to be much like Mexico. And the other thing, to show I'm not racist, you either are dealing with those that are Mexican drug cartel stuff, or you're dealing with redneck stuff. He said, John, we've heard you mention both of those things in the last. Isn't that a contradiction? We had a judge out of Clayburgh County, which is straight that way, and he made it into the news because in his court, and he's still a judge, he says, this is redneck court. Now, I want you to imagine maybe Cool Hand Luke. Imagine the city or county you live in, and you go into a court, and the judge is maybe sitting there with the cowboy hat, and maybe he's got a straw in his mouth, or that's the image. You're here in a redneck court, which is the indication we do our hanging justice here. That's kind of the implication of that. Now, I spoke against that judge using that language. But then you have the other side. That should be enough for anybody thinking of relocating to this region to get the gist of it. And then you have the other cases I dealt with. Now, I went through Mathis. Mathis is the city where the felon cop is on duty. Just so happens that's the cop who strangled his fiancée, did not murder her, but that's a felony charge. But then the paper revealed he convinced her to say they had rough sex, they were gonna lie, that was his thing. The DA did a particular pretrial diversion, but later on he admitted, yeah, I choked her, I strangled her. Still on the job. That's Mathis, a little city that way. That's the same city where this young man was shot and killed by a Mathis cop yesterday, or out of Mathis, whether it was an officer or a SO, a sheriff's deputy. But it said he was with the task SWAT team and all, which would, you don't use a SWAT team response to a possible psychiatric or drug thing, how that case showed up on the news. Then you also have, I mentioned my experience at my daughter's ranch, which is also that way. You had another town right out there called San Diego. You had a police chief by the name of Nava. Mr. Nava, stepdaughter, committed suicide with his service revolver. There was also notes of a sexual romantic connotation between the police chief, Nava, and his stepdaughter. And then there were reports that there was DNA evidence of Mr. Nava in his stepdaughter's bed. Now, you would think things of that nature would bring some type of a criminal penalty. He had zero for that. Nothing. He was recently dismissed over something else because it was another thing, and he's challenging that. That's another little city here in South Texas. Then I took my daughter and I took a ride. They were running the animal shelter out of that little city called San Diego. These are all connected here. And I remember they were doing it for free, yet they had a paid employee like the city dog catcher. And then the reason my daughter also started her own thing, one of the dogs, my dog Troy, came out of that dog pound. They were taking care of the animals for free. They were doing it all for free. The paid employee was not doing the job. But then one day they went in and some of the animals were illegally taken out for like dog fighting. They don't know who took the animals out. My daughter was upset because somebody took all the recording equipment out of the dog pound. Chief Novice said it was them. We took it out. So they were afraid, and I took a ride with Lulu. Oh, she had to go to the store that day. We were working at that little dog pound. And I didn't realize, didn't you want to go buy cigarettes, John? Then I realized they didn't want to, they were too afraid to drive alone as females. Not because of what we refer to as criminals, but because of the chief of police, but because of law enforcement, because of redneck courts and Mexican mafia courts, because of corruption. And all of those things are true that I gave you just now. Now picture relocating to a place like that. And I told you why I can't do it. Because they even went with that one case was showing will target your daughter. That one particular case. So they have no holds barred. You come this far. Now if I knew about it, that it was like this, and a lot of it I did learn because of the ministry with the guys. Hearing a lot of stories that I didn't believe in the beginning. So don't let anybody fool you. The people should be aware of the level that we're at here, which is very substandard. Very substandard. I'll give one example. I haven't commented that much on Sheriff Jim Kalin, but this shows you the level of the people that are running the show down. Sheriff Jim Kalin, they had a case a few weeks back, and there was the local tax assessor, Kara Sands. Tragically, her sister was killed in a car wreck a year ago. I actually didn't realize it, but I was on my way to my daughter's the day that her sister was killed, and they're charging that young man with, a felony, or they're going. But anyway, then there was an incident a few weeks ago, a month ago, where some girl claimed she worked at the court, she worked for a lawyer, she claimed Kara Sands sexually touched her. She claimed that Kara Sands touched her thing and then touched her breast. She said, I felt humiliated. Oh, okay. She made a police report, then she went and filed another report. Now, what Mr. Kalin said was he looked at a video at the courthouse of the incident, and while he looked at the video, he said he determined that the girl was lying. Now, video, understand, is one piece of evidence. You also have testimony. She claimed there was another video. Whether it's true or not, we don't know. But then that girl was arrested for filing a false charge. And Mr. Kalin went on the Jim Lago show, which is a local radio show. And I heard him discuss the case. And he said, now, I can't get the exact quote, but he was defending Kara Sands. He said this young girl was setting her up, possibly so, possibly not. But then he said, and she was arrested at the time. Then he said, but she better drop this now. Well, that was a threat. You see, as a law enforcement department head, right there you should have known you don't say that. During the actual current ongoing criminal case on the Jim Lago show, the sheriff said, she better drop this now before it goes any further. You don't do that. And anybody in law enforcement would tell you exactly that. I've never been trained in law enforcement. This is kind of like common knowledge that people have some education. And I just threw that out as it shows you what you see when you come to this region. And just those few little ones I gave you, whether or not this Mathis person, the one that shot, I don't know if it's the same, but it's all in the same area here. It's all in the same substandard that you see. So this should be the last one. I didn't listen to any U.S. news. There'll always be stuff about it. But when you see me posting like AKA Little Mexico, or that's not a joke. That's not a joke. Judges on the court, still again, to this day, who had connections exposed in the public with money laundering, guys coming to cases, lawyers out of Mexico that were not registered in the U.S. having connections to judges. So people should be aware. They are more concerned with that type of activity than how good the Buccaneer days thing goes, or how good, that's a part of it. That's a part of it. And then when you think, man, my daughter, I gotta make sure they don't target her anymore, or things like that. And you're talking about law enforcement. People, when they're going to relocate, they want to be aware of that. They want to be aware of that. I've just documented multiple felonies just in the last 5 videos. And the way they deal with it in this part of the country is like an in-house discipline. An in-house discipline, which would be considered actual out-and-out felonies. So I'm not over-exaggerating when I say you have a crisis in Corpus Christi, Texas. And if people were aware of all that goes on out here behind the scenes, they would not relocate a business to this region. They would not invest in this region. Because then they realize what they've gotten into. And I do believe many of the pastors and leaders that want to have a good relationship with the cops and everybody else, I often get upset because what they do is they have an environment, many of them hire cops to do security and all this, and that's okay to do. Well, actually, I don't think it's okay to do. It's a bad statement of your faith that you have to have officers to protect you, sending you a message that we should not fear death and God is our deliverer. But there's the lack of the church to speak out on social justice issues. Many people criticize me for attending the Catholic Cathedral, which I certainly do. But they have, and maybe they are not as good on doctrine as some of the Protestants believe, but they have a track record of social justice. They have a track record of speaking out for the oppressed and understanding that that is a vital part of the church. And that's why when I see the kind of view I see of the average Protestant church minister, if you were to say, don't you see that this is an aspect of your church? Don't you understand? And if it happens to be one of your church members that was maybe shot or brutalized, and it's almost like they're so consumed with, I just need to get enough people to tithe so I can preach Bible words on Sunday. And I know that's the view. And if you say, but don't you think when you look at the ministry of Jesus or John the Baptist speaking out against injustice, talking so much about how to treat your fellow man that Jesus says even the judgment, the final judgment in the teachings of Christ depend on how you treated your brother. He said, I was in prison. You didn't visit me. You were not concerned with me. I was in need. And in that environment where Jesus was preaching that, you had a religious group of preachers, Pharisees, and they were so caught up on their calling to simply speak. You had scribes write the words of Scripture, not realizing they were so vitally disconnected from actually living those principles. And without any particular church, I think the Protestant churches in general are consumed with the 6 success of, quote, their churches. And if you looked at the landscape of things like I've talked about, they're almost blind. They almost are just as blind as some of the people that are in authority in our particular community. And I find, and that upsets me. Every leader should have some type of a voice, somehow. And that if you see oppressed people, if you see injustice in an area, you don't sit down with those people at the prayer breakfast and say everything's okay. You say, I read of the killing of a young man, and his mother was concerned, and he had some type of an issue. And I heard the cops went one night, and the next day they went and they shot him. You say, oh, well, it was justified homicide. You say, but no, we're concerned. We're concerned whether or not as a society we're going to accept that as a level of the taking of a person's life. There's a high value of Scripture, puts such a high value on human life. So there should be a concern in the Christian community when they feel they also see injustice. They're not just concerned about how many people can tithe, how many people I can get in my church building, how much. Look at that as well. Part of the fault falls upon the church, not understanding and recognizing that the role, it's not the media's role. They often show things that are wrong, and then they speak out on them. But it's really the role of the Christian community to have some type of a voice for justice. So I'm going to post all these tonight on one post. And look, the cops, people complain. They try to remove me from those sites because of you use bad language to it. I'll tell you, if you committed a killing and then lied later about it, and that's happened in many cases, they said, oh no, our lives were in danger, then finally videos were released, lied about it. That's much more of a crime than dropping an F-bomb. But yet you complain. John speaks bad about us, and then you go to all the YouTube and everything else. Let's remove. It's more important that the truth is said. Sometimes people have to be shaken out of, chicken. In the book of Revelation, this because it says, one of my homeless friends was quoting this in it. It says, you're lukewarm. And God himself said, I'd rather you be all the way cold or all the way hot than to just be sitting in the middle all the time, living your life just in desperation, some type of success you want to issue.